fact that a graph of inflation and unemployment produces something more akin to Swiss cheese than a relationship leads to a logical question. Do these two variables have anything to do with each other over the long run? Of course, we can pick up on something like distinct phases of a relationship when we look at the data chronologically, but that doesn't tell us if we have a predictable linear connection between the two over any long period of time. Truth is, there really doesn't seem to be one. But we knew this from my video on the equation of exchange, where I explained how the quantity theory of money suggests that in the long run, variables like the velocity of money and the real output of the economy are constants. So inflation over longer time spans is determined by the supply of money, not really economic activity or growth. The empirical data supports this too. Annual inflation over 10% is closely related to the growth in the money supply for most countries. That leads us to a long-run Phillips curve that is basically a vertical line, indicating that unemployment in the long run is determined by factors unrelated to inflation. So what determines unemployment if not inflation? To understand that, we need to understand the different types of unemployment that can exist. First, there's frictional unemployment, which is the kind of unemployment that exists because workers and employers take time to find each other. Public policies like generosity in unemployment insurance or government job boards can influence the amount of time it takes to find a job, and therefore how much frictional unemployment exists at any given time. Both work on something we call the reservation wage, which is the amount of compensation someone is willing to accept for their labor. There's an assumption that reservation wages are negatively associated with time. In other words, your wage expectations decline the longer it takes you to find a job. For that reason, it's in everyone's best interest if you find a job swiftly. There's also cyclical unemployment, which is related to the business cycle. During economic expansions, more people typically find jobs, reducing unemployment. The reverse tends to happen during economic corrections. People lose jobs, which increases unemployment. Janet Yellen, the former chair of the Federal Reserve, had once theorized that some firms offer wages higher than the equilibrium wage for their open position as an incentive for workers to be more efficient and to reduce labor turnover. This efficiency wage theory is sometimes pointed to as a cause for exacerbated cyclical unemployment. Fewer workers get hired than theoretically would because firms are using their labor budget to pay each worker more than the market suggests. Finally, there's the vicious structural unemployment, which is the kind of unemployment that exists because of a lack of in-demand skills among people. It's why the US could be in a position where there are more jobs than people who have none. It's why we often need to encourage migrants to work in the US in high-skilled positions. It's also a big part of why poverty can be so persistent and generational in this nation. When people don't have the skills that are in demand, they can remain unemployed, even if they are aggressively seeking work and want to badly work. If they remain unemployed for a while, the gap on their resume can be an additional deterrent to people hiring them, reinforcing the structural challenges they're facing. This can even manifest itself across entire neighborhoods and over generations. More on that next.